Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Board of Directors meeting for September 15th of 2022. We are located in Sacramento today. However, we do have some members joining us by telephone as per the executive order for roughly the next fiscal year. And so it'll be a little more convoluted than it would be if we were all here, but if you'll bear with us, they'll be on landlines, so we'll not have an opportunity to know when they wish to speak, and I'm going to encourage any of our board members who are joining by telephone to just weigh in with you want to make a statement when you do want to do so, and you'll be recognized as soon as we're able. With that, I'd like to ask our secretary to take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Schenk?
Here.
Chair Richards?
Here.
Director Camacho?
Here.
Vice Chair Miller?
Here.
Assembly Member Arambula? Was that I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Here.
Director Perea?
Here.
Director Guillemette? Director Escutia?
Here.
Director Williams?
Here.
Director Pena?
Here.
Senator Gonzalez? Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And do we have a flag this morning? We do, it right behind us. So, Director Shank, if you'd like to lead us in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under
This
God.
thing was right here, and it made a watermark. So just be
Thank you.
careful.
Before we start the agenda today, I'm going to ask the board secretary to notify or to explain to the public how you may address us, whether you are in the chamber here or you are calling in. So, Mo, if you'd please provide that information to those with us here or listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, all. Before we begin public comment, I would like to go over some important information. For members of the public who have joined us in person and wish to provide public comment, you will be called in the order we have received your green public comment card. If you have not provided me your public comment card and wish to provide your public comment, now would be your time to provide that card to me. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. We are also allowing members of the public to provide comment remotely by telephone. That will occur after in-person public comment. Does anybody wish to provide public comment in person at the moment? Alan, can we queue up our public commenters over the phone?
If you wish to ask, if you wish to ask or register public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. You'll hear an indication you've been placed into queue and may remove yourself by repeating the 1, then 0 command. And speakers, we have no one queuing up for public comment at this time.
Thank you, Alan. Mr. Chairman, we can move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a reasonably short agenda today, but an important one. So we will start with our agenda item number 1, which is the board officer elections. I'm going to ask Chief Counsel Fowler to take us through that.
Thank you, Board Chair Richards, and good morning, Board. We will take 2 separate votes this morning for the chair and for the vice chair positions. I will start by taking nominations for the position of chairperson for the authority board. Do I have any nominations?
Yes, Ms. Fowler. This is Member Shank, if you can't see me. I would like to nominate as chair Tom Richards, our current chair.
I will second the motion.
Do I have any other nominations for the board chairperson position? Okay. Do any of the members want to comment on this nomination before we vote?
Well, as the maker of the motion, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Chair Richards for his devotion to and countless hours that he has given to making this project a reality. And I know I speak for all the board members when I say thank you. And your punishment is a renomination.
This is Director Williams. This is Anthony Williams. I just wanted to echo those remarks and just say that I am strongly in support of his nomination and encourage my fellow board members to support it as I believe we will. We are thankful and appreciative for your willingness to step up. So thank you.
This is Martha Escutia. I just wanted to, concur with all the statements that have been made already. But I also want to personally thank Tom Richards for his patience. It takes an incredible amount of patience to deal with this type of a position. But also, Tom, just thank you so much for your patience in dealing with me and my incessant questions and my pushing and pushing and pushing. And you have always just been a gentleman. So I definitely look forward to seeing you again as our chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stucci, and it's been a pleasure working with you and will continue to be so.
Okay, Board Secretary, can you please call the roll to elect Tom Richards as the Board Chairperson of the High Speed Rail Authority?
Director Schenk,
Yes.
Chair Richards,
I'll abstain.
Director Camacho,
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller,
Yes.
Director Perea,
Yes.
Director Gilmetti, Director Escutia,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Pena.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion carries. Congratulations.
Go ahead, Chief Counsel.
And now we'll move to nominations for the Vice Chair position. Are there any nominations for this position?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to place in nomination Nancy Miller, our current vice chair.
And I will second that.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the Vice Chair position? Okay. Do any members of the board wish to comment on the nomination?
Yes, I'd like to make just a couple of comments. Nancy has been able to bring to the board a balance from her legal background to help us balance out some of our business perspectives and a legal perspective. But certainly her hard work, I've certainly learned a great deal from her and appreciate all that she brings to the board. Thank you.
Ditto on that, and thank you, Nancy, for your willingness to do this and to step in and be there as a support, not just to our chair, but to all of us. Thank you.
And I would echo both of those comments and appreciate very much the great partnership that we have as chair and vice chair. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you all. That's very kind. Appreciate it.
Board Secretary, can you please call the roll to elect Nancy Miller as Vice Chairperson for the authority?
Director Schenk,
Yes.
Chair Richards,
Yes.
Director Camacho,
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller,
I'll abstain.
Director Perea,
Yes.
Director Escutia, Director Williams,
Aye.
Director Pena.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Alicia, for taking care of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll...
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry,
please.
would now be an appropriate moment for me to make a request, I guess it is,
Yes.
having to do with elections. Since the years seem to come by more quickly now than in the past, maybe it's just my getting older, but in any event, could we have a review of our bylaws to see a potential amendment to make the terms 2 years instead of 1 year. I know it doesn't take up a lot of time, but just the continuity for 2 years would seem to be more efficient than having to do this every year. And I know we can't discuss or debate that now, but if we could maybe ask you to appoint a subcommittee to take a look at the bylaws and to agendize this for a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is the acting on the approval or modification of the minutes for the August 17-18 board meeting. If there are no changes or additions, deletions, etc., do we have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Director Camacho? Director Miller? Excuse me, Vice Chair Miller, was that you?
No, it was not.
Okay, who is it? Oh, there's Mike.
That was me.
Director
Second.
Maney, I'm sorry, I didn't see you over there. Okay.
This is Scrutier.
Well, that was Scrutier. I think that was Director Escutia then on the second. Okay, I have a motion and second.
Yes,
All in favor?
thank you.
I'm sorry, we're not going to do that. Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Schenk?
thank you.
Yes.
Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller?
Yes.
Director Perea?
Yes.
Director Escutia?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, agenda item 3 is consider approving the Proposition 1A funding plan. I'm going to ask our CEO to provide the introduction and then turn it over to our CFO, Brian Ennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Ennis, our CFO, will do the presentation on the adoption of what we call the Subdivision D funding plan for the Proposition 1A bond appropriation. And just to give the board a little bit of background about why we're back here on another funding plan, in February of 2021, I think it was about 18 months ago, we brought to you what we called the Subdivision C funding plan, and that is a requirement under the Bond Act itself that before we go to the legislature to seek an appropriation of bond funds for this project, we have to submit a funding plan that is reviewed by an independent entity, and then we submit that to the Department of Finance and the legislature. And we did that in February of 2021. Now that the budget deal is concluded this year and those bond dollars are appropriated, the requirement on the Subdivision D plan is before we spend those dollars, we adopt what we call the Sub D plan. And it's not going to vary much or be much different from what you saw in the Sub C plan in terms of our path and what we're doing going forward. But once you appropriate, before you spend, we come back and do another funding plan. And that's what Brian's going to present to you today. And so the Sub D plan, upon your approval, will then submit to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee and the Department of Finance for their review as well. So that's why we're here today on this item. Okay, thanks, Brian.
Good morning, board members. As Brian mentioned, I come to you today with an action item for adoption of the final funding plan, and also bring to you a independent consultant report, which is a requirement of the Bond Act as well. So in this presentation, I'm going to provide an overview, talk about the statutory requirements of the funding plan, how we've met them in our report, talk about the findings of the independent consultant, and finally get to the requested board action item.
Can you speak up, Brian, please?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, this seems like a non-contentious item. Is it possible do we need to approve this? Or is this just for us to?
It's an action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels about this item, but.
I agree with you.
Unanimous consent.
Yeah, I feel like we're just so happy about this, and I
I think that if that's the preference of the board, certainly we can do that. And with the knowledge also that it's very similar to what we've already seen.
Right.
So it's not like we're seeing this for the first time. In my reading of it, other than perhaps numbers, occasionally I saw no changes from what we had looked at before and acted on.
Right. So I don't know, my colleague's on the phone. It's just information we've heard, and don't know if you want the presentation or not.
Is there anything specifically that you'd like, given what I think the board's preference might be, is there something that or any items you'd like to specifically point out, Mr. Annis?
Sure. Well, just a couple things to note is we would intend, with board approval, to move this fairly rapidly to the legislature. There's a 60-day review period in statute, and we're trying to keep on a timeline to allow the treasurer to sell bonds in November so we can access the cash as early as November.
And the board's trying to give you a few more minutes.
There you go, there you go. The other, just one more point to make, Department of Finance does submit a letter saying the plan meets the requirements. They did ask us to make one amendment to the plan to further clarify the ability to use cap and trade funds to cover any inflationary impacts. So the action that's requested by the board is for the CEO to finalize and submit the funding plan. So we would intend to add one sentence, just again clarifying the ability to use cap and trade to cover any costs that come outside the board.
I second.
Mr. Chairman, I do have
I guess they cut you off, Brian.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry. I think we've got a member on the phone. Go ahead. We have a motion and a second discussion.
Yeah, this is Henry. I just have one quick question, Mr. Chairman. I was reading the executive summary of connecting the executive summary to the funding report. And really my question for you as our chair is what is your confidence level of us meeting the 2025 deadline to complete CP1? The first 119-mile segment.
Well, I think that I don't want to theorize what I think it's going to be. I think that I can say, and I think that we are aware that management and staff are working on both schedule and budget, and I know that it will be coming to us in the near term. I don't know if I don't want to commit October, but it's, I believe, is it fair to say it's certainly going to be before the end of this year?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in October, and I'll cover this in the CEO report, we will talk about what's got to be in the project update report due to the legislature in 2023. That includes schedule updates as well. So we'll be talking about that with the board at the October hearing.
Yeah. So Director Perea, I think that rather than me trying to answer that on documents that I've not yet had an opportunity to look at, or none of us have, I think that we will be able to start seeing all of that in the October meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions or comments from any of our members who are not here but are on the telephone? Hearing none, then we do have a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Schenk?
Yes.
Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Camacho?
Yes.
Vice Chair Miller?
Yes.
Director Perea?
Yes.
Director Escutia?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Aye.
Director Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, colleagues. Moving on to item number 4 today is the Southern California update. And I don't know if you did you want to introduce this at all?
I'm sorry.
Did you want to introduce anything on
Yeah,
this?
just to remind the members that there was a request some time ago that we provide roughly quarterly updates on the different regional advancements that we have in the project. This is an informational item only, and from our Southern California areas, our Regional Director, LaDonna DiCamillo, he was here to update you on the status of some of our work in Southern California. So with that, LaDonna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Board. I'm happy to be here to provide an update on what's happening in Southern California. Today, we're going to talk generally about our two project sections that are still in the environmental process, Los Angeles Anaheim and Palmdale to Burbank, which hit a major milestone this month. And then we also have Jeanette Owens from LA Metro who's available, and she's going to provide a status update on our Bookend investments. So diving right in on our first slide, just a reminder of the 4 project sections in Southern California: Bakersfield to Palmdale, Palmdale to Burbank, Burbank, Los Angeles to Anaheim. 2 of those projects have completed our record of decision, notice of determination. Bakersfield to Palmdale and Burbank, Los Angeles are done. So we'll talk today about Los Angeles, Anaheim,
Excuse
and
me.
Palmdale to Burbank.
Can you move closer to the mic so that,
Right?
sorry.
Can I move the mic closer to
I
me?
think you have to,
Okay,
yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
I'll move over a little bit. That should help. Okay. So we're going to start with Los Angeles to Anaheim. First slide, just a reminder of what we've proposed for Los Angeles to Anaheim. On our first slide, it's a nice summary with that will connect Los Angeles Union Station to Anaheim Arctic Station in a 30-mile project section. We've proposed 4 stops, including the 2 I mentioned, as well as one at Norwalk, Santa Fe Springs, and Fullerton Station. It would be a 4 mainline track corridor. It's an existing freight corridor, so our proposal is to electrify 2 of the tracks and use them for passenger rail, and we'd have 2 tracks dedicated to freight rail. And our proposal, as envisioned, would accommodate passenger volumes that are outlined and envisioned in the 2018 State Rail Plan. With that, we'd be doing a number of grade separations or proposing some grade separations in this corridor. To the next slide.
Ms. DiCamero, could you maybe do us a favor? Because we're not looking at the screen when you say go to the next slide. Would you just let us know which page that is?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I'm on slide 6.
Thank you.
So this particular corridor from Los Angeles to Anaheim is owned by BNSF Railway. It is a primary corridor for their freight operations and a very busy corridor. What we have proposed to do to create capacity within that corridor is remove 10 trains per day from the corridor, 10 freight trains, and we would BNSF would then process those trains in the Inland Empire rather than at their Hobart yard in the Commerce area. So this map that's on the right shows that the Colton component, which we have proposed, would be an intermodal facility in the Inland Empire that would process those 10 trains. So it would be 5 coming in and 5 going out. We've also proposed a Linwood component, which is up in the Barstow area. It's the green in the top right of the map. And that would be just staging tracks. Those would be tracks for BNSF Railway to hold trains while there's construction or congestion within the corridor. We are still working on this environmental document, and there's a lot of data that we're collecting as a result of the freight components. Our schedule would be currently is to release a draft this next fall or winter, so about a year from now at the earliest. I think we could get that draft done. So I'm going to move to Palmdale to Burbank, and the substantive slide 8.
Could we pause, please, here?
Of course.
So if all of this came to pass, I'm looking at LA to Anaheim with 3 stops in between, or 2 stops, 3 stops. How fast is the train going? It's not high speed, right?
It's not high speed. We are at the same speeds that the other passenger carriers are operating at.
So is this basically replacing the Pacific Surfliner?
No, different
Amtrak?
ridership. It would be a different ridership.
How so?
Well, we would be offering the 1-seat ride for passengers that are coming from somewhere north to Anaheim. Pacific Surfliner is serving more the San Diego community, and we're stopping at Anaheim and not serving further south.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know that. So we're just talking about traditional rail speed in this corridor.
Correct. Our infrastructure, though, will accommodate the other passenger carriers and make it more fluid for all, with ours electrified.
The idea is to expand capacity for all the passenger rail on that route, but with the 2 tracks being electrified, the speed increases in that section will allow for 110 mile per hour speeds. And that is, that complemented by what we're doing outside of that region going north will allow for a more efficient passenger train.
I'm sorry, Brian, you said 110 mile in what segments here?
I think the LA to Anaheim segment right now on the traditional route is capped at something like 79 miles per hour passenger speed. But when it's electrified and the freight are off of it, you can, as a technical matter, you can go faster. I think our speed cap there is 110 when we electrify, and we add some grade separations. And so I think you can achieve higher speeds, although there'll be a lot of passenger services in that corridor. So I'm just saying that electrifying it and moving the freights off of the two right now, the freights and the Losan service and Metrolink all share tracks. What this is proposing to do is leave 2 tracks essentially for freight and then electrify 2 tracks only for passenger. And so you're getting a greater efficiency and an ability to go a bit faster by doing that. But again, the Anaheim to LA route, it's fairly minimal, but it's definitely a more efficient use of the corridor for passenger, and it will increase the number of passenger trains, not just for us, but for Metrolink and Losan in that corridor.
And I think it's also that the projected speeds in that corridor, in combination with the speeds requirements that we have from San Francisco through the first phase, will still meet the requirements of our 2 hours and 40 minutes under Proposition 1.
Yeah, and I think
Stops at Union
correct me if I'm wrong, but just to be very clear, I think the speed requirements in Prop 1A are limited to San Francisco to LA.
Union Station.
Yeah, Union
specifically.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And just one other point, isn't it at Union Station, we're changing the configuration there so it can be a throughway instead of a back-out situation?
Yes, and you'll
Always now.
hear more about that from Jeanette Owens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She's going in detail with those improvements. Yeah, so the corridor is occupied by a number of different carriers, and even though we're only proposing the 4 stops for our stations, the other passenger carriers will have more stations that they serve, which will kind of limit how fast we can go as well. So,
Mr. Chairman, will those trains be our trains or the Metrolink trains?
they would be our trains. 1-seat ride is our proposal.
Okay. And I know this isn't your segment, but along the similar lines, Brian, in 2025, when the 119 miles are operational, my understanding is those will not be our trains. They'll be Amtrak trains running on the system. And if so, who will be purchasing those trains for operations?
In the Central Valley, I don't know.
Brian, I think that Director Perea was addressing a question to you. Henry, would you go ahead and restate your question for Brian?
Yeah, along the similar lines for our Central Valley segment, understand that Amtrak will be operating the system once it becomes operational until we connect to the Bay Area. Who will be purchasing those trains, the high-speed rail or the San Joaquin Valley Authority?
If I heard the question right, by the time we were operations in Southern California, it'd be high-speed rail direct operations.
No, I'm sorry, Brian. I meant
the shared corridor here will allow 3 different operators to operate on it. Losan, which is the current Amtrak service, Metrolink, which runs a commuter service, and then our service, which at that time would be an interregional, intercity service, all electrified, from Anaheim north to, Palmdale, Bakersfield, Fresno, Merced, into the Bay Area. And so we would be the operators of that service.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, go ahead, please.
Okay, we're going to move to Palmdale to Burbank. We've hit a major milestone this month, so excited to share with you what's happening from Palmdale to Burbank. It is an approximately 31 to 38 mile section, depending on which route is measured. There are 6 alternatives. Our design speed is to a 13-minute nonstop design speed. We are connecting 2 stations, and both of these stations have been approved in previous environmental documents that have been before you. So the Palmdale station was approved in Bakersfield to Palmdale, and the Burbank station approved in Burbank to Los Angeles. So we have these 6 alternatives in our draft environmental document that was released on September 2nd. Our preferred alternative is, did I tell you what slide number? I'm on slide 8. It is the second from the top, and there is a little flag that says preferred alternative. And when I've been here about 2 years, and I did ask, how did we end up with 6 alternatives? So I'm going to go to the next slide and give a little history of how we got here. Starting specifically in 2010 to 2014. At that time, the Palmdale to Los Angeles was one section. And the team realized that there are really unique issues with different components of the geography. And so in 2014, we divided the one section into 2, Palmdale to Burbank and Burbank to Los Angeles. And then those were scoped as 2 independent sections. And then the Palmdale to Burbank team continued to look at 3 primary routes. There are 3 routes, one that parallels and kind of hugs the SR 14, State Route 14, and then there are 2 more easterly routes that go through the Angeles National Forest. In 2018, we refined SR 14 and shortened it a bit, and that was adopted as the state preferred alternative. We continued to vet those routes with the public, and the Corps of Engineers specifically expressed concerns about our proximity to Una Lake, which is up in the Palmdale area, and asked us to look at some routes that would avoid being so close to Una Lake. So at the northern part, you'll see that we swing out and around Una Lake and then reattach into the 3 primary routes. And so that in 2020, we actually adopted SR 14A, which is the SR 14 route, which swings out at the northern part, and that is our preferred alternative. Excuse me. And then 2022, in September 2nd, we released our draft environmental document. So I will dive a little bit more into those specifics, but that is how we've carried forward all 6 alternatives into our draft environmental document with SR 14A as our preferred alternative. Next slide. A lot of the input and why we have these alternatives is a result of a lot of outreach and stakeholder engagement, and we've heard concerns from various groups which have led us to these alternatives and to the selection of our preferred alternative. Next slide. SR 14A, by comparison to the other alternatives, is most constructible from a standpoint of, even though we have the most tunneling miles, they are not as deep as some of the other, the E alternatives. Yes, Brian?
LaDonna, just so for our members on the phone, you're now on slide 11.
I'm on slide 11. Thank you for reminding me. So slide 11 summarizes the benefits to SR 14A. It's the shortest amount of tunneling within the Angeles Forest. And the Angeles Forest, there have been concerns expressed about hydrology and pressurization when we start tunneling the pressurized water that we might run into in the E sections. So SR 14A has the shortest amount of tunneling in the Angeles Forest, lowest impact on surface and groundwater and wildlife because we're avoiding Angeles Forest, and then of course we avoid Una Lake. And we also are able to be in tunnel under the Pacific Crest Trail. So there would not be impacts to the Pacific Crest Trail. Okay, so moving to slide 12. This is a dive into the Una Lake avoidance alternatives on the northern end. And as you know, in most sections, we try to utilize existing transportation corridors. We are in an existing transportation corridor in the Palmdale area. So Avenue S would be a new grade separation, and that's about where we start to split away from the existing corridor that's occupied by Union Pacific and Metrolink. And so our proposal then is these routes that are shown. SR 14A, again, is our preferred alternative, swinging out around Una Lake and then being in tunnel through the community of Acton. The next slide is slide 13. We're going to dive into the south end, and we are utilizing an existing corridor on the south end of our proposed preferred alternative, SR 14. And we'd be rejoining the existing Metrolink corridor for a time. There is one grade separation that we've proposed that would be new, that is shared with Union Pacific, and that is at Sheldon. And then after that, it's a little bit of threading a needle, which is why we developed the graphic on the right, because we're then having to go to depress our alignment to get into the tunnel at the Burbank station. So we'll be within the corridor, but we won't necessarily be at the same elevation as Metrolink. So it does create a little bit more of a complex plan there as we're going under I-5 and into our tunnel for the Burbank station. Okay, with that, as I said, we'll go to the next slide, which is slide 14. We've released our environmental document to the public September 2nd. It's available at public libraries that are listed here on this slide. It's also available on our website or upon request at records@hsr.ca.gov. So we're encouraging the public to review our document and provide comment. On our next slide, slide 15, we show an interactive map, which has been very popular with constituents who want to see where the alignments are in relation to their property. So this is just a snapshot of a screenshot of our online page where people can go and type in their address or their APN number and see the alignment and how it is in proximity to their property. Slide 16 are important dates for the public to remember. We have an open house where we'll give a presentation and have our experts available to answer questions on October 6th. It will be virtual, and information about that is on our website. There will be an English and a Spanish presentation available that evening. And then public comment will be taken at an online public hearing, which is October 18th. And we will have a court reporter available. People can call in and give their comment at any time during that open online public hearing. We're, of course, also taking public comment in other ways, and I'll cover that next. So far, our official meetings are all virtual because we had to plan these in advance and notice them, and we didn't know what was happening with COVID. We are working on 2 in-person meetings, one for the community of Acton, and that is early October, where we'll have a small group meeting up in Acton. They have some internet connectivity issues and prefer in-person. And then we're also looking at one in Southern California in the Pacoima Sun Valley area. Both those maps that I showed you as the dive-in would be where we'd host something in person.
Will the virtual meetings be audio only, or will there be audio and visual?
The virtual meetings will be audio and visual.
They will be both, okay.
Yeah. And
Natalie,
ahead.
would you make sure that the board members, is Natalie around? Yeah. Would you make sure that the board members get all the information so that they can not participate, but at least be on board with regards to the virtual meeting that's going to occur on October 6th? Thank you.
If I could,
Yes.
Are you taking public comment on October 6th?
We are not taking public comment on October 6th. That is when people can ask their questions, and we'll provide answers. But public comment will be taken on our website. They can send an email. We have a 24/7 phone number, which is at the bottom of this. So people can call in comments. But at that particular hearing, we won't have a court reporter to transcribe comments.
Is there a way that you can take comments online? Since
Yes,
it's an online-
all of that, yes.
So will you allow for that on October 6th?
Yes.
I just think sometimes people, they can't make every meeting. So if they're
Of
at the
course.
October 6th meeting and they want to make a comment, there should be a way for them to do that.
Yes, and in our presentations, there's links to where people can go type in their comments. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, there are, in our presentations for the public, which are much longer than what I've done today, there are a number of links, and our team puts in chat links to where people can automatically go to type in their comments.
Okay, I just think at the 6th, you need to have a way for people to comment.
Yes,
Okay.
at that point,
Thank you.
it won't be verbal. They'd have to type it in.
They'll have to type it in, or you'll give them a link about
And
where
we'll
to
give
send
them
it. Okay.
all the instructions to do that.
Thank you.
Yes. And it is very important. We want their comments. We definitely want their comments. Moving to slide 17, it's a summary of our schedule. This graphic you've seen before as our staged process delivery, and we are in stage 2, about midpoint. We've analyzed alternatives. We've put out our draft, and following this, we'll take public comment through November 2nd. I got that wrong. November 1st, we'll take public comment. That's an important date to get right. And then we'll analyze those comments, review them, make sure that we respond to all comments, and hope to have a final environmental document released next year, late next year. So we would have our final environmental document to the board in the fourth quarter of 2023. Okay, with that, my closing slide is a summary of where people can go to make comment. That 800 number there is where people can call in anytime, 24/7. Our Palmdale _Burbank at hsr.ca.gov is a good place to go to submit written comments. Our team has linked it to our main website, hsr.ca.gov. We have a Meet HSR SoCal website as well that provides additional information for people that can kind of walk through some detailed information. So we're doing everything we can to put it out in the public and have comments received.
Excuse me, LaDonna. So all of this is on our website, did you say?
This is on our website. Yep, they're nodding back there.
How else are we getting this out? Because being sensitive to being a member of the transitional generation, there are people, and I would suspect a fair number, who don't go to the website. It's not, they're not digital natives who automatically go to a website. They still, hear the local news on radio, TV. They look at local little neighborhood newspapers. Are we reaching out other than electronically to
Absolutely.
people? Especially with the phone number, by the way, because a follow-up to Nancy's question about whether people can give comment, and you said, yes, there'll be live chat, but that would be the time to also make sure people have the 800 number so that they can call in a comment and not have to type one or be online.
Absolutely. And we'll put that, we put it in our slides for the public. We put it in the chat so that they can do a quick link. This information was put in advertisements in local newspapers, La Opinion, and I don't remember the name of the other one, but I know it was in at least one or two other publications. And then we've sent out over 40,000 mailers, and some households got more than one. So we at least know that they were received, but we sent over 40,000 notices within a certain proximity of zip codes around our alignments.
Good, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, transitioning a bit to our bookend projects. As you know, we've invested in the bookends, including Link Union Station. We've put $441 million as a state into Union Station improvements, and Jeanette Owens is going to talk about Union Station as well as Rosecrans Marquard, which is the second picture on slide 19, showing a grade-separated intersection at Rosecrans Marquard and Santa Fe Springs. And so we're going to highlight those bookend investments in the next presentation, which hopefully Jeanette is online. She's not in person, but you should have her presentation, and I think Justin's been coordinating with her to start her overview.
Good morning, Chair Richards, board members, Senator Gonzalez, and CEO Kelly. My apologies for not being able to be there in person. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to call in and give you an update on our California high-speed rail bookend investments in Southern California. The Link Union Station project, which is to the right of your screen, the right picture, and the Rosecrans Marquard grade separation to the left. I do want to thank Justin, who will be assisting me with the slide presentations. I apologize in advance for any hiccups, as this is my first time presenting without seeing you or the presentation, so I will do my best. The next slide. This is the Rosecrans Marquard grade separation project. This is an existing conditions of the diagonal crossing at the intersection of Rosecrans Avenue and Marquette Avenue in the city of Santa Fe Springs. In 2016, it was ranked as #1 as the most hazardous grade crossing by the California Public Utilities Commission, with 26 incidents, 5 fatalities, and 6 injuries. When the rail tracks, as you can see here, are sliced diagonally through the intersection, the train and automobile crossing is longer and particularly dangerous because drivers and pedestrians can't always see the oncoming trains, especially on a heavily congested intersection with over 120 passenger and freight trains that goes by, in addition to 40,000 vehicles daily. Next slide. The Rosecrans Marquard key stakeholders are California High-Speed Rail, the City of Santa Fe Springs, the City of La Mirada, the Federal Railroad Administration, AFRA, the BNSF Railway, our California Public Utilities, our Caltrans Division of Rail, and our MetroLink Southern California Regional Rail Authority. Next slide. I'm on page 4. This is the Rosecrans Marquard funding plan at approximately $56,439 million. It comprises roughly of 17% local Measure R, 68% of state between California High-Speed Rail Prop 1A, our STIP, our Transit Corridor Enhancement Program, and as well as our CPUC Section 190. It also consists of 10% federal with our Tiger, now known as RAISE, and 5% BNSF. Next slide. The Rosecrans Marquard benefit comprises of improved safety with the elimination of the train-to-vehicle pedestrian accidents, enhances the rail efficiency and goods movement with time savings of up to 21 hours per week with the elimination of the grade crossing, and supports a third mainline track that enables BNSF to provide additional 32 passenger train slots in the BNSF corridor, and as well as accommodate the future high-speed rail. Next slide.
Excuse me, this is Member
Sure,
Shane.
sure.
Yeah. So looking at this, how did we come to agreement that Prop 1A would pay the lion's share of this? What was the negotiation whereby we came up with having to put in 76 million and change?
Let me just try to provide some context for that.
Okay.
Back in 2012, there was an agreement worked out with the legislature on funding for bookend projects in both Northern California and Southern California. The Southern California total was $500 million. The Northern California total was $600 million at that time, for $1.1 billion roughly in bookend projects. We then worked with the regions on the highest priority projects of where those dollars would go. And in Southern California, roughly $78 million is dedicated to the Rosecrans Marquard grade separation, which, as Jeanette noted, was at that time the most dangerous grade separation in California. And so $76 million of the Prop 180 dollars went there, and the other $423 is for the LA Union Station project. So it went through a process of an MOU, I think, entered into around 2012 between the authority and Southern California parties. And the top two projects that came out as the highest priority were LA Union Station, that upgrade, and this grade separation.
Well, it's all done, I know. I fully understand and support Union Station. This one, and I don't in any way take away how dangerous this intersection is. I've driven there. I know how dangerous it is. But it's been dangerous for a long time, pre-high-speed rail. It's been there, pre any of us. And in these, and I know there's not much we can do about it now, but going forward on these areas where there has been great danger long before there was high-speed rail, for us to pay half of this is, to me, just doesn't set well. You know, I think that the communities, the other sources of funding should have come up with more. I don't say that we shouldn't have participated. Of course we should, because it will ultimately have some benefit to us. But again, just my common sense of right and wrong, it seems like we've been used a little bit here in having to pay half of this. And I hope in the future on these negotiations that we are a little tougher on protecting our Prop 1A monies that are so limited. Anyway.
Thank you, Director Schenk. I think that certainly as things come up in the future, these things, of course, come to the board for discussion and ultimate decision. So I think that we can certainly address concerns of all of the members as they come before the board.
I know. It's zero.
Should I proceed to slide 6, or do we want to go back to slide 5 or 4? Or meaning the funding plan, 5 is the benefit.
Go ahead, I'm sorry I interrupted you. You're still on page 4, or excuse me, page, page 5, I think.
Yes.
You're now on 6?
So I'm now on 6, Chair.
Okay,
yes.
fine. Page 6.
If that's okay. Okay. So the city, this is the Rosecrans Marquard Advanced Utility Relocation, commonly referred to as AUR, provided a cost savings of up to $18 million with the help of the City of Santa Fe Springs. The City of Santa Fe Springs authorized Metro to execute its franchise agreement to relocate or remove conflicting utilities at the utility's own cost. So, for example, with over 21 existing Southern California Edison poles within the project limits, 17 out of the 21 were either relocated or modified because it conflicted with the grade separation. And the planning, design, and construction, including the communication lines, by working with these communication agencies and Edison, took 5 years. It was completed in May of 2022, in time for the general contractor to begin, significantly reducing overall project risk and saving the project more than $18 million. So this is a classic example of the cooperation that we have received, our partnership and leadership at the City of Santa Fe Springs. Next slide. So this is the overall project update on what we have accomplished to date, anticipated completion. We had completed the NEPA in November of 2018. For a grade separation, we received a CEQA exemptions on most, if not all, grade separations in California. The construction of the advanced utility location took 28 months, which began in January of 2020 and was completed in May of 2022. Our right-of-way certification was completed in December of 2022, and we awarded construction in April of 2022. Our anticipated construction completion is fall of 2025. Next slide. Our second high-speed rail bookend investment is the Lincoln Union Station Project Phase A. This is a high-speed rail rendering of the Phase A improvement that transforms our Los Angeles Union Station to a run-through station. So this is an interim run-through operation that shows only 2 run-through tracks, but as you can see here, the actual bridge will be built to accommodate 9 run-through tracks in total. Next slide. This is our existing Union Station today, our beautiful, historic, iconic Los Angeles Union Station. Refer to the bottom left corner of Union Station. This is what we call our biggest star in the 2021 Oscars. It was built in 1939 as a sub-ended track station. And if you refer back onto the upper left-hand corner, you can see the sub-ended tracks, and you can see right adjacent to the south of that sub-ended tracks is the US 101 freeway. It's important to note the US 101 freeway is because there are on-ramps and off-ramps. I'm not sure if you can see it there on our, as well as in our what we call our El Monte busway facilities there. That really it's really our core points that we need to make sure that when we do build a run-through track bridge structure, we have to raise the rail yard because of the freeway on-ramps and off-ramps right south of Union Station. So I wanted to point that out. I'll go more in detail in the preceding slides. The picture to the right refers to the throat of the rail yard located north of Union Station. This is where all trains enter and exit the rail yard, heavily congested during peak times. Idling and waiting for each train takes turns as they either enter or exit the rail yard. There are a total of 7 existing platforms at Union Station. The first platform to the left, you see a little green kind of bungalow roof on top, canopy, is our Metro's light rail station, our L line station, and then we have 6 regional rail platforms today. And then to the left, you'll see our Pastores Bus Plaza and, of course, our Metro headquarters. Next slide. This overall shows the link to Southern California. As the largest multimodal rail terminal and transit station in Southern California, it really links all the counties from San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, which is not shown, Ventura County, San Diego, Riverside County, Orange County, in addition to all our long-distance trains that are coming in. So it's really the heart of our overall network here on the regional rail system in Southern California. Next slide. The Lincoln Station is implemented into 2 phases, Phase A and Phase B. Phase A is funded mainly consists of a signal upgrade, run-through track bridge structure with 2 interim run-through tracks, and converting Platform 4 to a run-through track operation. Phase B, which is not funded, includes raising the rail yard up to 15 feet high, which enables the construction of a new shared lead track for high-speed rail, new platforms, new passenger concourse, and all the passengers' amenities of retail, escalators, elevators that initiate the transformation to our world-class transit and terminal station. Next slide. So this is a good kind of a depiction of our existing commuter and intercity rail services at Union Station pre-COVID. With our current stub-ended operations using 6 regional rail platforms, there are approximately a total of 178 daily weekday trains. Next slide. The proposed commuter and intercity rail services at Union Station with full run-through operations at the completion of Phase B shows the power of what run-through operations can do. You can raise, with the same number of platforms, you can accommodate a whole new high-speed rail service and increase capacity about approximately 60%, from 178 to 500 daily weekday trains. Next slide. So as I summed up, our overall the benefits of the linking the station project increases their passenger rail services with the same number of platforms, from 178 trains to 503 trains. It also reduces dwell times and increases and overall reduces greenhouse emissions because of the reduction in dwell times, has basically improved our signal infrastructure system. When Union Station was built in 1939, the signal system there was pretty much, aside from positive train control system, PTC, the signal system was as old as Union Station. And so modernizing the signal infrastructure system was very important. Phase B also enables us to widen our platforms to accommodate future growth for the next 30 years, widening it from 21 feet to 28 feet with all new passenger amenities at Los Angeles Union Station. Next slide. This kind of gives you an overview of the Phase A that I mentioned earlier with its signal work, the converting our existing platform 4 to a run-through platforms, and as well as the construction of the overall run-through bridge structure. Next slide. This is a rendering of our full build-out of the linking and station project that comprises of both Phase A and Phase B, that shows all run-through track structure. Now, again, this depiction is a Rolls-Royce version. It's just a concept of a dream of what Union Station could be. Next slide. And these are the various components of Phase B elements, which includes, as I mentioned before, raising the rail yard, a new passenger concourse, raised lead tracks, as well as the new full run-through on the run-through track bridge structure. Next slide. I thought this was important to throw. This is a cross-section of the rail yard, as you can see here, and the Phase B passenger concourse. This shows you that when we have to raise the rail yard in order to build the run-throughs. So in Phase A, the Phase A bridge structure will be raised to match this overall elevation because the Phase A run-through structure needs to be raised. So with this, you can see that our passenger concourse is underneath the rail yard. And if you're familiar with Los Angeles Union Station, we also have a subway system, what we call our red line, purple line, now referred to as our line B and D, underneath the passenger concourse. It's almost like 3 levels: rail yard, passenger concourse, and our existing subway system. If you look to the left, that would be our historic Union Station. Platform 1 is our gold line, light rail station line. And then platforms 2 to 7 is our regional rail platforms that comprises of 2 platforms for high-speed rail on platforms 2 and 3. And then 4, 5, and 6, and 7 are regional rail platforms for both Amtrak and Metrolink. Platform 3 is also shared with both Amtrak and Metrolink as well. And then to the far right is our Petsoris Bus Plaza connection. Next slide. So this is a depiction of a cross-section that we have where it was very important for high-speed rail to ensure that with the future phasing of high-speed rail that may come in a little later, and if Lincoln Station is fortunate to have Phase B funded, it was important to high-speed rail to making sure we minimize any construction costs to accommodate a fixed platform height with a fixed elevator and escalators. So if you notice, a high-speed rail train has a different floor height than a typical Metrolink commuter train and Amtrak intercity train. The difference is approximately 15-inch versus a high-speed rail train of 51-inch from the floor of the train to the top of the rail. And so how we solved this, and we used it, we also saw this at Denver Union Station, is we install retaining walls. So when high-speed rail comes at a later date, everything remains the same, and all we do is just change the track bed, elevate that a little or lower it for the high-speed rail so that it accommodates the future phasing of high-speed rail. Next slide. This is the funding plan for Lincoln Station Phase A, totaling approximately $950.398 million. Next slide. This is where we are on Lincoln Station on the pre-construction phase. This is the Cmgc life cycle, project life cycle that shows the two phases, pre-construction and construction. It comprises of 7 stages from project initiation to environmental clearance to right-of-way acquisition, final design, construction testing, and project closeout. As you can see here, the pre-construction phase work is ongoing. We completed the CEQA. We're working with NEPA. We're working with the High-Speed Rail as the NEPA lead agency to complete the NEPA and PE design. We're in Cmgc procurement and our real estate acquisition and final design of the third-party work. Next slide. So our overall next steps is to complete the NEPA environmental work as early as summer of 2023, continue on our work with our real estate acquisition, advanced engineering design, and our final design for our third-party work, the utility work that takes a little longer, and then procuring our Cmgc and working with our engineers and stakeholders on our final design. Next slide. We thought this would be a good summary of project updates of both the high-speed rail bookend projects in Southern California, the Rosecrans Marquard grade separation with a funding plan of $156.439 million, which is to your left, and the Lincoln Station Phase A project funding plan of $900.398 million, which is to your right. Let me start with the Rosecrans Marquard funding plan. The planning and design initiated in April of 2015. I mentioned earlier our CEQA notice of exemption, all the way down to when our first California High-Speed Rail project management funding agreement was executed. I believe Rosecrans Marquard was the first on May of 2018. And then our NEPA FONSI findings of notice of significant findings was completed by the FRA in November of 2018. And then it just proceeded down to where we are today. I mentioned earlier our construction groundbreaking occurred in June of 2022, and our anticipated construction completion is in fall of 2025. On the Lincoln Station project, giving you some background, the Lincoln Station project was also known as Los Angeles Union Station Run-Through Station, and so it was first planned bought and led by Caltrans and Amtrak back in 2006. At that time, I think they were only looking at 2 to no more than 4 tracks running through across as run-through operations. Since then, with so many projects coming in Union Station, in addition to the high-speed rail coming in, we initiated planning with accommodating and incorporating high-speed rail into Union Station in winter of 2016. Preliminary engineering design is still ongoing, completed 35% design. However, we are working on the NEPA, and so we want to make sure we continue to modify any preliminary engineering design to be consistent with our NEPA. We completed our CEQA in July of 2019. We had a CEQA addendum moving forward with the state's vehicle miles traveled in October of 2021. And then we executed, so thank you very much on behalf of our CEO and our Chief Program Management Officer for the execution and your approval of the PMFA in June of 2022. And then our right-of-way acquisition is ongoing. We are working with our California High-Speed Rail NEPA team on early concurrence of any of our early works. We anticipate to complete NEPA, as I mentioned before, as early as summer 2022. We do have some early track and signal work by Southern California Regional Rail Authority that is expected to be completed as early as 2023, and our Cmgc procurement is ongoing. Doing a comparison between the two, we did want to stress that a CEQA exemption and the NEPA FONSI, or findings of no significance, is definitely a much more abbreviated, expedited environmental clearance compared to a full environmental document for both a CEQA and NEPA at Link Union Station. Next slide, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. This concludes my presentation. I apologize if it was a little lengthy. And if I went too fast, please let me know. I'm happy to go over any slide that you would like to see.
Ms. Owen, this is Tom Richards. As the authority, as I'm sure you're well aware, this is incredibly important to us, as it is to Metro and Southern California. What I think I'm going to ask our CEO would be to have his staff contact you. What we would appreciate very much would be to have make arrangements for you to be at one of our board meetings in the near future to present this this presentation with you here in the room, so that it's easier for us to understand. And if you would modify it to whatever extent necessary prior to that time for any changes from what you said today or any additions, it would be appreciated. But I can tell, I mean, I think we heard you as well as we could under the circumstances, but and the presentation is very much appreciated, and you've done a terrific job. We want to improve on the location so that we can really get a clear understanding of what you've been saying, and we can appropriately ask questions that we may have. But I wanted primarily point out that it's incredibly important to you and very much important to us. So we are joined at the hip, so to speak, on this, and we want to be a good and responsive partner as you are and have been to us. So Mr. Kelly, if you would arrange for that, even if it's early next year, but we don't want to delay beyond that.
Will do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Anyway, are there any other questions or comments from members of this board to Ms. Owen?
Thank you for your presentation. It was just a little hard for us to hear you at times, but it was very comprehensive. I just would want, when you come back to us on the Phase A, just a little bit more explanation of how that runs. It looks like a single track running out, and I'm not sure if it's a single track or double track, back and forth, I'm thinking, or a throughway, but just maybe a little bit more on that particular part of Phase A. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Vice Chair Miller. LaDonna, you're up again.
I'm just here if you had more questions, but I
Okay.
think I'm done.
All right. Any
All right,
questions
thank you.
for our Southern California Regional Director? Yes, Director Pena.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about feedback that you've been getting so far from the environmental justice community on the project? And maybe this is
For which
Yes,
project?
absolutely.
Is it, are you talking about environmental justice community around our alignment or around Lake Union Station?
actually both.
Okay, let's let Jeanette start.
Ms. Owen, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. Let me know if you're not able to hear me. I'll try to speak a little louder. We have been receiving, as you can know, when we completed the CEQA environmental, we have received all support, pretty much full support on the Lake Union Station Phase A during our CEQA process. And our environmental justice overall, we have met all the requirements in our environmental justice, and the community support on our environmental justice. So we don't have any particular issues on our environmental justice that we have right now. Is there any particular concerns that you may have that I can address?
No, just generally, I wanted to know what feedback you were receiving.
Well, because this is a regional rail project, and because it's, as you can see here, we made it. It was very important for us not to impact the community. Here, if you take a picture, let me see if you can go back to see if you can go. Let me refer to a rendering so you can see it a little bit more. You go back to slide 8. Can you show slide 8 up on the screen? If you see here at slide 8, the surrounding communities of Los Angeles Union Station, we have our Chinatown. Here's our historic Union Station that you see in red with the red roof. Our Chinatown is a little bit to the west of that. And then we have our Little Tokyo, which is further south, right by the run-through track structure and south. And then we have our historic arts district, right to the south of that, but to the southeast. And then our Boyle Heights around the area on the eastern end on this community. Overall, because of the surrounding communities understands the importance of the transformation of Los Angeles Union Station to a run-through track operation, we have received significant amounts of support in the surrounding area. We have apprised them in every phases and every changes to the Phase A. So we have not overall. There's very limited impact that we are acquiring. If you recall, when I did a cross section of the rail yard, and I mentioned that the red line, purple line tunnel is underneath the passenger concourse, that red line, purple line tunnel actually comes right across. When I say right across, it comes in from Union Station and a diagonal all the way across the freeway. A diagonal goes all the way across the freeway underneath. So we were very careful. HDR was very careful in its design to straddle a subway system and really minimize our overall impact to the community at large. So as you can see, we have 3 full real estate acquisition take. One of them is an empty area right adjacent to the US 101 freeway. So we have nothing but garnered support for the Lake Union Station Phase A.
Good, thank you.
And moving to the project sections, I'll start with Los Angeles to Anaheim. Our team has been meeting with communities along the existing rail corridor over the years, and especially with a focus on the Colton component, because we know that there is an EJ component to that. And I'd say we're in the dozens of meetings now. As we get more information and more definition to our project, it will definitely be a focus. More recently, Serge Stanich and I have, and others on the team, have been meeting with some environmental justice groups that are from the Inland Empire that have experience with freight and have some concerns generally with freight. So we've been meeting more with them to understand what their concerns are and where we might be able to find ways to work together. On the Palmdale to Burbank section, it was one of my concerns with needing to be virtual and having this, are we going to be able to be in person or not? So we went with the officially everything is virtual, but we are going to make sure to have an in-person meeting, a workshop where people can go from station to station, and that would be in the Sun Valley, Pacoima area. People can go from station to station and talk to our experts, and that's an option for them, and we'll make sure that everybody has an opportunity to comment. So we're trying to do a specific outreach in that particular area to make sure that they have opportunity to learn more about our project and to comment.
This is Marcus Scutia. I'm assuming that with regard to all these sections that you are giving the proper notice of these meetings to the legislators that represent those areas?
Absolutely. Last week we had a briefing, we called it a legislative briefing. It was for staff of the legislative representatives as well as senior city, county, local staff, so that they had the same information that we'll be presenting to the public. And I don't think we've sent them out the PowerPoint yet, but we will. We'll make sure that they have the PowerPoint so they know when those meetings are upcoming.
And then just as a follow-up, I would just like to respectfully suggest that once you're finished with the meetings that you need to have, as a result of all these sections, that you compile a list of the meetings and separate it section by section and separate it by legislators and send them copies of all the meetings that you met with, whom did you meet with, on what date, so that the legislators are keenly aware that you are doing the necessary outreach and you have it in writing and just give it to them. Therefore,
Sure.
It's just a good thing to just inform everybody of what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. We usually do it by request, but I think it is a good idea to let them know what we've been doing.
Yeah, just preempt it.
Yeah.
Preempt the question. Just go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Scutia. Yes, go ahead.
Just one follow-up. On your 800 number that people can call into, is there an opportunity on that line or another line where they can actually leave a message with their comments?
I believe that's what that 800 number is. It's just a matter of recording the message and then it gets transcribed and put into our official record. Yes, that's I don't know if there's a greeting or not. I haven't called it.
Is there an opportunity?
There is, they say.
Okay. Is there an opportunity on that line for someone to get a call back if they want?
Yes, they all get transcribed and then sent to our team, and if they're asking for additional information, we'll make sure to follow up. And we're also offering office hours for some of the interested people who want to spend maybe a little extra time with some of our technical staff on a specific issue. They can do that and request that through the 800 number.
Okay. And you can accommodate multiple languages?
Yes, especially English and Spanish. We've written the printed materials have gone out, I think, in 6 languages. Does anybody know? It was in multiple languages. Our open house will be in 2.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Pena. Any other comments or questions from members of the board? None from the people on the phone? All right, well then, Ms. DiCamillo and Ms. Owens, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate your time today.
We will now move on to item number 5 on our agenda, our CEO report. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that last a bit took a while, so I'm going to move quickly on this. There are really 3 items that I want to update the board on in the CEO report, and then just a quick announcement of some good news for us. But the quick items are, first, we are doing some work. Once we advance the environmental document in corridors, we're able to dig a little bit deeper and do more work with our partners on how the corridors will actually operate. And I just flagged this because recently I and the managing director for Caltrain sent a note to their board about work we'll be doing on updating the project management finance agreement, shared use agreements we'll have with Caltrain in that corridor. And it's important that we continue our partnership for how we'll actually implement the 2 services through that corridor. So there's a series of plans and programs and agreements we have with them now, and more that we'll be working on as we go forward. So I flagged this for you now because it's an important part of our partnership in that corridor and the operational benefits of both services in that corridor and how we'll accommodate both services. And so I just flagged that for you now. I'll be coming back to this board with more detailed updates on various elements of those agreements as we go forward. But again, we are engaging with the Caltrain group on updates we have to make to some of the agreements we've had in place. And so I just want to flag that for you and say that's something I'll be coming back to the board on routinely. Second item is in the F&A committee this morning, there was a report about a change order that we executed. And this is what we call the missing 2.5 miles, is what it's referred to as. When we relocated the Highway 99 element just north of Fresno to accommodate the high-speed rail service, we then have to build the railroad component of that. Initially, that was going to be a part of that original Caltrans contract. It was taken out of that contract in favor of using the existing contractor who was already mobilized on the site and already had done similar work around the 2.5 miles. So we just executed that contract and we reported that to the F&A this morning, and I'm reporting it here. That's $101.5 million to complete all of the work associated with what we call the missing 2.5 miles of the initial contract. That involves some guideway subgrades, some intrusion protection barrier work, railroad access roads, fencing, drainage, and all the civil works necessary for the track and systems to come through that section. So we just completed that work. And then I wanted to just give, the third issue is to give you a sense of what's coming up at the October board meeting, at least hopefully we'll bring back to the board in October so you guys can start thinking about these issues. You know that we entered an RFQ process for the design of the 4 Central Valley stations. We'll be coming back to the board for the proposed award of that contract in October. We are continuing to do some work on the program delivery support contract, and we intend to come back to the board with that, assuming all the outstanding questions have been answered. Margaret Cederoth, Meg Cederoth, who addresses this board every year or so on the sustainability report. That report is updated. We'll be bringing that back to the board in October as well. And then I'm looking forward to having a very important discussion with this board in October on the 2023 project update report. As you know, every even-numbered year, we do a business plan that we submit publicly and give to the legislature. And every odd-numbered year, we do a project update report where we update our activities, what we know, what anything that's changed, and how we're managing risk going forward. This year's project update report will take on a little bit more emphasis and meaning because of the budget deal that we passed with the legislature. In that budget deal, they're asking for additional information to be in that project update report, including probability and risk for all manner of things, including schedules and costs and budget and where we are. And so I want to just say to you that with the new requirements in statute and the report's broader focus this year, it's not due until the legislature until March of 23, but my intention is to be talking to the board about it all through fall and into the winter as we get to that March date, because there's so much that's going to be in that report. So in October, I'm going to come back and do a presentation about what that budget deal requires in the project update report and share with you information as we develop it and as we go. Again, the idea is no surprises by the time we get to March. We'll have a lot of conversations about it leading up to that time. So I'm going to start in the October hearing with a broad conversation about that. And then we also want to open a conversation, or at least come back to the board members with a recommended schedule for the 2023 calendar year. For all of our meetings. We'll talk about that initially in October too. And I do want to get some feedback from board members about how we space the meetings apart. As you know, we meet once a month right now. There have been some recommendations to extend the in-between period from 4 weeks to 6 weeks. And so we want to have a conversation about that, and we may propose what that will look like for the board's consideration in calendar year 2023 as well. So these are the issues I want to come back to you all with in October. So that'll be the basis of a very substantive hearing I think we're going to have in October. And then just a couple of good news notes for you. You may recall that several months ago, High Speed Rail was named the Employer of the Year by the Sacramento chapter of the Women in Transportation Seminar. I think just yesterday we were notified by the Los Angeles Women in Transportation Seminar that we were named their Employer of the Year as well. So we're very pleased about that and just got that recognition yesterday. And the other thing, I'm gonna butcher this, I'm sure, but I do want to acknowledge Melissa Figueroa, Annie Parker, and their communications team. There's an association in California of public information officers, and once a year they review various campaigns or messaging campaigns that were done and provide awards to state agencies that have done superior work in that area. And I think we brought home three different awards from that, and so I want to acknowledge our team on that. I would just say too, I do think that the work we're doing, particularly with drone footage and other things on social media and sharing what's going on and how we're advancing this project through technology and social media is really the best I've seen in the state. And so I'm really proud of the work that Melissa and her team are doing, and I want to just acknowledge them. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm done unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any questions for our CEO? Seeing none, good job, thank you. Let me just take a couple of quick minutes on item number 6, which is the Finance and Audit report. We met this morning at 8:30. Currently, these numbers are as of July of this year, 2022, and primarily for fiscal year 22-23. We have cash, the authority has cash right now, or at that time, of about $2.1 billion, of which $2 billion is cap and trade proceeds. We mentioned last month that the August 17th sale, cap and trade sale, appeared to generate what is now estimated at being about $161 million to the authority. The administrative budget for the fiscal year 22-23, that's important because it's limited by the statute, but is at $93.4 million for administration. Our capital outlay budget, that is the budget for 22-23, is reasonably flat with what we had for 21-22, and that's about $2.3 billion. Total expenditures for this project from its outset, that is the very beginning of High Speed Rail Authority, to the end of July of 22, is $9.9 billion, most of which has been spent on construction. With regards to contingency, the authority currently has remaining $2 billion in contingency funds, of which that amounts to 40% of what was originally allocated at $5.2 billion. Brian just mentioned the contingency drawdown a few moments ago, so I'll not hit that again. Our number of workers on the job for July was slightly less than the month before, down by 6 to average daily workers at about 1,113 per day. In terms of the progress on construction in the month of July, Has been no change in the number of structures, guideways work that was reported the month before. With regards to right-of-way procurement, 3 parcels were delivered to the design builders in July, which brings the total that's been delivered at 92% of the 2,309 parcels that are required. On utility relocations, 8 relocations were completed in July of '22. That makes the number that have been completed or are in progress or approved at 70% of the total, which leaves another 561 which have not been approved or started. And that gives you a real quick summary of finance and audit for today. Any questions on any of those items?
Quick comment.
Sure, go ahead.
The numbers that you're reciting are numbers for July.
That's correct.
So we still have August, so we're not really taking advantage of really a true number where we are in
Right.
terms of dollars spent or construction activity. I just wanted to note that.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Anybody on the phone, our colleagues on the phone, any questions or comments? All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, hearing none, I do want to mention one thing, that we're going to have an additional item on all of our board meetings from this point forward, and I was reminded by Director Schenk earlier, years ago, we used to have an opportunity at the end of each meeting whereby each board member could address his or her colleagues and the public with a comment that we held it at 1 minute. So it's not a long addition to our agenda, but we want to ensure that that's placed back on the agenda from now on. It'll be the last item in each board meeting, and that will be for director comments, and we'll go right down the dais and ask members for anything that they'd like to make a statement on. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our agenda to a close, and we thank you all for being here, and those of you in the public who joined us, thank you. We will see everybody, or hopefully see everybody, but certainly talk to people and listen to you in next month in October. With that, ladies and gentlemen, the meeting is adjourned.